Homelessness carries a pretty large human cost. Per person, crisis estimates preventing homelessness costs the public sector between an additional £1.4 and £1.5 thousand, whilst allowing it to persist for 12 months costs between £11,000 and £20,000. This is because homeless people are more likely to incur costs of A&E visits, long hospital stays, or rely on temporary accommodation services for an extended period of time, for example, all of which come at a cost to the public sector. Therefore, preventing homelessness is not only ethically in the government's best interest, but financially too. But still, the ONS estimates there are 320,000 homeless people in the UK, 120,000 adults and 200,000 children, accounting for 140,000 families. This means roughly 1 in every 200 people in the UK are homeless. Homelessness isn't confined to people who are rough sleeping. Shelter also defines being homeless as residing in temporary accommodation, in a hostel, or in social services, as well as those known as hidden homeless, who may be sofa surfing at friends' houses or living in squats, difficult to account for in official figures. However, rough sleeping is justifiably seen as the most severe form of homelessness. No greater evidence of this than 43-year-old Hungarian national Gyula Remez, a homeless man who died on the 19th of December 2018 on the footsteps of the Houses of Parliament. The famous St. Martin's charity, who benefit every Christmas from the millions raised by BBC Radio 4 listeners, were forced to admit that they had denied Gyula Remez emergency accommodation because he was not eligible for benefits. His death was one of 726 homeless deaths in England and Wales that year, the highest since its recording began. The most common causes of these deaths being drug poisoning, suicide, and alcohol related. As to be expected, there is no region in the UK more heavily affected by homelessness than London, with 1 in 53 people estimated as homeless. And in the top 20 local authorities for rates of recorded homelessness, only 2 aren't based in London. The 2 most common reasons for loss of last settled home are friends or family no longer willing or able to accommodate, and termination of an assured short-hold tenancy agreement, otherwise known as an eviction. It is also harder than ever before to obtain a council house. Between 1990 and 2013, not once had less than 20,000 new social homes been built per year in England, but since 2013, it has consistently stayed below 20,000. The 1977 Housing Act introduced the concept of priority need to ensure that pregnant women, homeless families with children, and vulnerable adults would be prioritized for assistance, and rightly so. In 2002, the categories of priority need were extended in England and Wales to include 16 and 17-year-olds, 18 to 20-year-old care home leavers, those who have served in the armed forces or spent time in prison, and those who are fleeing violence or threats of violence. However, by contrast, homelessness amongst older unmarried men without children was therefore considered less deserving of help and somewhat more tolerable. The data alludes to this, with 84% of those rough sleeping in England being male, and 80% being over the age of 26. The UK has for long had a contemptuous attitude towards homelessness. The Vagrancy Act, passed in 1824, means it's still a crime to this day to be homeless. When campaigners brought a petition to the government calling for its repeal in 2018, the Home Office responded simply saying it has no plans to make changes to the law. Police have wide discretion on which crimes they choose to pursue. Many have chosen not to enforce the offence against rough sleeping in recent times. Since the peak of over 2,700 Vagrancy Act prosecutions in 2014, the latest figures show a dramatic fall of over 50%. Hostile architecture or exclusionary design can be found across the UK. An urban design strategy that uses elements of the built environment to restrict behaviours that can be engaged, often targeting people who rely on public space more than others. Examples are curved bases on benches to prevent lying down, spikes on flat surfaces, or sprinklers outside of buildings in order to deter homeless people from resting. And during the coronavirus pandemic, rough sleepers were provided with accommodation in guest houses, hotels and hostels. This was short-lived, however, and they were eventually moved back out with nowhere to go. This attitude towards homelessness is contrary to Finland, who are the only European country to have seen a substantial reduction in rates of homelessness, largely thanks to their Housing First policy, where homeless people are provided with their own permanent accommodation with no questions asked or rules imposed. For example, people with addictions can continue to drink or take drugs in the accommodation provided. They are also given mentoring and constant human support. Some accommodations coming with communal living and dining areas, spotless kitchens, gym rooms, and even saunas. The UK have implemented a pilot project based on the Finnish model. In 2018, the government provided £28 million for 3 Housing First pilots in Greater Manchester, Liverpool, and the West Midlands. In London, there are small-scale Housing First programmes running in 11 boroughs. In Scotland, 5 cities are trialling Housing First schemes. The 2019 Conservative Manifesto included that it would expand the Housing First programmes at an attempt to end rough sleeping by 2024, as well as renewing the Affordable Homes programme, which supports the delivery of hundreds of thousands of affordable homes in order to prevent people from falling into homelessness and to bring in a better deal for renters, including abolishing no-fault evictions, which allows private landlords to evict tenants with 2 months' notice once their fixed-term contract has ended, without giving a reason. With evictions being one of the biggest causes of families being made homeless, landlords will need to give a concrete reason to evict a tenant and provide evidence. A step in the right direction to hopefully follow the major lead Finland has taken in trying to turn homelessness into an issue of the past.